Top 20 Director of Operations Interview Questions and Answers. One of the most important positions needed in a company is a Director of Operation. Whether it's for the employer or the applicants, an interview is the time that will decide if that company could get to hire a great Director of Operations who could maximize the efficiency or productivity of the company. This article will provide 20 interview questions with the answers for the Director of Operations position. 1. Why are you interested in this job? This common starting question may provide if the candidate is really motivated to work as part of the company or just applying. Tip number 1. Be confident and specific. Tip number 2. Display your knowledge and familiarity with the job. Sample answer: I hold a master's degree in personnel management. I am highly interested to contribute myself in this field, hence when I saw this position, I thought it would be a great opportunity for me. This would be a chance for me to apply my knowledge which could benefit the company aside from further evolving my career path. 2. What are the roles of a Director of Operations? Candidates should do their homework and be familiar with the job offered. Tip number 1. Be clear in stating the roles. Tip number 2. Do not mull the answer. Sample answer: the Director of Operations is responsible to supervise daily activities happening in an organization. The roles range from implementing an operational plan to resources management. The other main role, as the name suggests, is assessing the efficiency of the organization and decides if any changes are needed to improve productivity. 3. What are the qualities that a Director of Operations should possess to be effective? Several fundamental qualities are needed to become an effective Director of Operations. Be aware of the qualities sought by the company as well. Tip number 1. Share why are the qualities important. Tip number 2. Avoid contemplating the answers. Sample answer: a great Director of Operations should possess excellent interpersonal skills. They have to communicate with various people, and negotiation skill is another skill that is important to be effective. Leadership skill is also highly needed aside from organizational skills. 4. What major challenges did you face during your last role? This question will display if candidates can face challenges and solve issues. Tip number 1. Be specific about the challenge. Tip number 2. Provide what you did to overcome the challenge. Sample answer: my first major challenge was constantly monitoring different departments' operations at the same time. I had to oversee the manufacturing management as well as the warehouse management, and it was quite difficult at first. With assistance from senior colleagues, I managed to gradually organize the management well. 5. Describe your daily routine as a Director of Operations. This question may provide if candidates are experienced or familiar with the tasks. Tip number 1. Provide the daily tasks of a director. Tip number 2. Be specific and concise. Sample answer: I was actively involved with the Human Resources Department in hiring new employees, from creating job descriptions to providing training and coaching for them. We were also tasked to assess staff's performances. Aside from human resources, I was also involved in revising the policies of the organization. 6. Describe briefly your job experience as Director of Operations. Having job experience is a bonus point for the candidates. Tip number 1. State what you did in your last job. Tip number 2. Be specific and confident. Sample answer: in my previous workplace, I had to collaborate with various head departments to make decisions on the goals and operational plan that should be implemented in the departments. We identify the important metrics needed to assess the performance of the operations going on. In certain cases, we had to devise plans to further polish the quality and smoothness of the operation. 7. What kind of strategies and mindset is required for this role? A good candidate who is serious about getting the job should envision what they have to do once they are hired. Tip number 1. Be specific in the strategies. Tip number 2. Be confident and not hesitate with the answers. Sample answer: the mindset that I have for this job is to emphasize good communication with others. Aside from sustaining good partnership and collaboration, it is very crucial to ensure that all messages are clearly conveyed. Good and effective communication will lead to expected outcomes as well as ensuring longer-term trust. 8. What is the biggest challenge that you foresee in this job? This question will display if candidates can prepare themselves for any upcoming challenges that may obstruct their ways. Tip number 1. Be specific. Tip number 2. What is needed to overcome the challenge? Sample answer: I think the most challenging hurdle in this job is to maintain and improve productivity. A great director should be able to maximize the productivity of the staffs, ensuring that the team could work efficiently to meet deadlines and even produce high-quality work. This could be achieved if the director has great leadership skills. 9. How do you stay motivated at work? Motivation at work may be the factor if the employee could work at the company for a short or long term. Tip number 1. Provide your methods to motivate yourself. Tip number 2. Find out the factors of motivation, either personally or professionally. Sample answer: the first thing to stay motivated is to pinpoint what demotivated me. I tried to avoid those factors or overcome them as soon as possible. When these factors have been solved, then only I could focus on things that motivate me. I will list down what are the things that give meaning to my job to boost my motivation. 10. Describe a time you failed in this role and the lesson you learned. A good employee should be able to admit and learn from their mistakes. Tip number 1. Admit the failure. Tip number 2. Provide your steps to solve the problem. Sample answer: the failure I had was when I started implementing the use of new tools in my department. It was quite abrupt and everyone was not able to adapt to the tools well. That aside, they did not fully understand the overall processes of the operation. That sudden change affected our performance. I learned that we need to carefully review the tools and understand the processes before relying to the automation of tools. 11. What would you do to an underperforming staff? This question displays candidates' leadership and communication skills in managing other staff. Tip number 1. Be professional. Tip number 2. Show that you understand your staff's consequences without crossing their privacy. Sample answer: I will first reflect on my directions. Were my instructions and expectations were expressed clearly? Do other staffs face the same issues? If more than one staff is showing underperformance, I may need to fix my instructions. However, if that staff is the only one affected, I need to approach the person to pinpoint the root of the problem professionally. 12. Are you familiar with managing a budget? Budget management skill is a bonus point for the Director of Operations. Possessing this skill will boost your chance of being hired. Tip number 1. Be honest about your knowledge or experience. Tip number 2. Provide what your tasks were if you had any. Sample answer: during my bachelor's degree, we studied budget courses for a few semesters. However, I never got the chance to be tasked with the budget in my previous workplace. I do hope I would be given a chance for this task to further develop my skills and apply what I have learned before. 13. What are the criteria needed to choose vendors? Choosing the wrong vendor may lead to a huge blow for the company, hence candidates need to be knowledgeable of the steps and criteria for choosing the best vendors. Tip number 1. Specify the criteria clearly. Tip number 2. Show familiarity with vendor management. Sample answer: the first criterion is the price. When looking at the price, some people may think that choosing the cheapest may bring the best profit, but I do not fully agree with this statement. The higher investment may bring better quality and service. Thus, it is important to analyze the current budget and forecast finances effectively to pick the right vendor. 14. You feel that we need to change the company's culture. What would you do about it? The culture established in the company may be a factor in a company's success. Hence, director needs to strategize on culture transformation if needed. Tip number 1. Be organized in your steps. Tip number 2. Do not be too ambitious in setting your goals. Sample answer: my mindset is that changes need to be done gradually, not abruptly. I will define the desired goal within a certain time frame, and one goal has been achieved, then only we proceed on another goal. The goals could be in form of expected behavior or values displayed by the members of the company. 15. How do you deal with difficult clients or stakeholders? Difficult clients or stakeholders may appear anytime, hence candidates should be able to prepare themselves with ways to deal with them. Tip number 1, be professional. Tip number 2, display that you could be firm. Sample answer: depending on the demands they make, one of the ways to deal with them is by simplifying decision-making. Providing them options and offering them advice for the choices may reduce the probability of getting a delayed decision from their part. The other key to good service is by being very clear in communication. Stress on the regularity of deadlines, information, and so forth about what we expect from them. 16. What would you do to ensure that the services provided by your team are consistent and up to date? This question may display if the candidates are envisioned with strategies. Tip number 1, display that you are always ready to keep evolving the company's operation. Tip number 2, this shows candidates' leadership skills. Sample answer: I will frequently provide training for the staffs. Aside from training, sending them to seminars conducted by other organizations to ensure that the overall service provided by the company could keep up with the ever-changing industry. The service will also go through appraisal and review. 17. How do you introduce new technologies to the company? Candidates should be able to effectively introduce new tools or technologies to grow the company. Tip number 1, display a good manner in introducing new tools for the company. Tip number 2, be organized when introducing the steps. Sample answer: it is important to have organized steps when introducing new technology. I will first review the features of the technology and discuss the idea with other managers. Then, I will provide heads up to the staffs involved so that they could prepare themselves to adapt to the new tools. Coaching and training events would be conducted to ensure familiarity and success in handling new technologies. 18. What would you do to improve operational efficiency? Display candidates' problem-solving skill and strategizing skills. Tip number 1, provide some examples that may save time and cost. Tip number 2, be concise. Sample answer: one of the ways is by resorting to technology for repeatable work. Automaticity may ease the tasks and allow staffs to focus on other jobs. It is also important to regularly analyze and pinpoint what are the problems that are hindering the smoothness of the operation. Constantly raising the expectations even after improvements are made is another key to the constant growth of efficiency. 19. Share with us your strategy to effectively delegate tasks among employees. A good operational director should possess the skills to lead and delegate tasks effectively. Tip number 1, show that you can trust your staffs. Tip number 2, be brief but provide a convincing answer. Sample answer: I will carefully assess each staff's expertise and skills. However, at times, it is necessary to entrust new tasks to other staffs to further unlock their skills. Asking for opinions from other people like other managers or the staffs themselves may provide valuable insights as to how to delegate tasks effectively. I will make sure to provide ample training and guidance for the staffs, especially for unfamiliar tasks. 20. Do you think working with other departments is important? A good candidate should be able to collaborate well with other staffs and departments. Tip number 1, display that you can work with other people. Tip number 2, don't contemplate your answers. Sample answer: yes, it is very important to keep up good teamwork with other departments. Unwilling collaboration with one department may affect the quality of the service or products, which will eventually affect the growth of the company as a whole. It is encouraged to regularly share feedback from other departments to further boost the quality produced. Conclusion: these are 20 interview questions that may be asked if you are applying for the Director of Operations. Do drop any comment on this list.